Marky Worthington Podcast all day.
All day.
Dream by night.
Don't buy me a drink. Just give me $10.
All day.
Go down to the strip club with your floppy disk and turn it into a hard drive.
Yeah, right. You'll get fucking thrown out by Big Tony.
We're here to name names and make people feel more ashamed for shit that they're not proud of.
Don't blow it. Keep it simple. Count your money.
Oh, whatever it is.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 94 of the Marky Worthington Comedy Podcast. I'm here with a very special guest here, joining here from LA. It is Chris Candy. How you doing?
What's up? Man, Marky, thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I like the structure in the background there. The bedpost reminds me of McDonald's fries, and it's making me hungry.
Yeah, it's my girlfriend. We moved in together, and she has this very lovely bed frame that is like a real pain in the ass to move.
Yeah,
because she doesn't want it to ever get scratched. She doesn't want it to be scratched. So it's like I've spent a lot of extra care making sure it survived any move we had together. So yes, and it also makes me hungry for McDonald's French fries too.
I'm glad the feeling's mutual. Getting the McDonald's French fries feed in, and this is for the audio listeners. Picture, like if there was like instead of a Happy Meal toy, they gave you a section of the bed every time, and when you put it together, you got an entire. It was like a subscription based thing, and then you could actually sleep in it.
Yeah, you could get the like IKEA McDonald's collab bed frame toy from. You just have to buy like 900 Happy Meals to get your bed frame.
Then the ironic thing is you don't feel any happier by the end of it.
No, you actually feel miserable. You feel the very unhappy meal. I actually
sorry.
Oh no, there's this like I actually heard it funny enough on the Mark Maron podcast. He was talking about. I was listening to his podcast. He was talking about this junk food kind of McDonald's vegan restaurant, and I've eaten I'm more or less vegetarian. So I went to it to try it. It was so good. It was like and it was vegan McDonald's food, and I think it's called the Unhappy Meal. I think that's what the name of it was. Get. It was like so good. I was like, oh, this is insane. And then I felt like trash after it. I got like McNuggets, like vegan McNuggets. I felt like nothing healthy about this at all.
It's one of those things where you think you're cheating the system, and then all of a sudden it just comes back to show you that there is no workaround. You can you always. Actually, if you didn't feel like trash after, you'd start to question whether it's authentic McDonald's or not.
Yeah, there is no true healthy like chicken nugget, I think is what I'm getting at. There's just no one. Yeah, this just doesn't work that way.
I have a bunch of random things that we can go into, and we're actually talking off mic about podcasting and additional stuff. Like I started doing in my sort of podcasting route by doing community radio. And interviewing bands. I see you do radio as well. Is that sort of how you got into podcasting, or?
Yeah, it is. Like, that's awesome that you did community radio. Yeah, it's kind of like a dying art here, but it's this station called KXLU, which is in Los Angeles. It's one of the OG kind of early FM radio stations. I went to college at Loyola Marymount, and KXLU was the college radio station. But kind of the difference is, and I guess a lot of college stations are like that, but since this is in LA, like KXLU broke a lot of rad bands. Like Nirvana came through there, the Beastie Boys. It's still got a big history in punk rock. There's Alma Del Barrio on the weekends for KXLU, which is a huge Latin radio show. It just serves as such a big service to the LA community. And I do this show called Noise Pollution there. It's kind of embodied a bunch of different shows, but in regards to like the way it was like programmed. But now I primarily like just play kind of garage punk and rock music, and then it can like flow into like sometimes it can flow into oddly like disco or vintage techno or something. So yeah, it's like a fun little show, vibey little rock show.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a bit like so before I did like before I did a podcast, like I said, I did the radio, and we did that as well. We'd sort of like start like, all right, we're gonna be metal, strictly metal, and before you know it, it was a bit of everything.
Yeah, I've been doing radio up there for forever, and I love radio. I don't know, what did you get out of doing community radio? It's kind of fun.
Oh, this is the best thing about interviewing someone who does a podcast and radio. They end up interviewing me. So that's one plus. But yeah, no, I got a lot out of it. Like one of my biggest things is I understood the work that goes into getting a good quality show. Like so often, and I guess it kind of wrecked me a little bit now because I can't listen to like radio or podcasts or whatever without kind of like listening out for like, you know, editing or audio filters or like, you know, random peaks in things like that.
Yeah.
But it definitely gave me a big respect for the work that goes into producing a show.
Yeah. So like for me, KXLU doesn't podcast their shows, and Noise Pollution, which is the name of my radio show, we didn't for forever. And then there started being kind of free podcasts. There was all of these, like, I had a couple friends who were doing like internet radio. This guy was doing this thing called No Wave, which is connected to this art gallery. And then I had a couple other friends who were like wanting Noise Pollution shows to be on their internet radios. And I just don't know why we just didn't start podcasting it. But there was a gap for me because like I didn't know how to really do a podcast, you know, even though it's the exact same thing as a radio show.
Yep.
But I had a buddy who I did improv with for forever. His name's Rick Darge.
Okay.
Rick and I make a bunch of stuff together, and we were just like, let's do a podcast. And so I started with him. I actually do a podcast with the dude over in Australia as well, called Too Much Movie with this guy Blake Howard.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's a movie podcast.
Yep.
And then I do a running podcast because I like to run a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I did see a few of the other podcasts around. Like, there's one called I think it's called OK Video. They just did like a 15-part John Candy's series.
Really?
Yeah. So they started. I think their first episode was Uncle Buck, and then they've worked through 15 more movies, which John was in.
Oh my God, I didn't know about that. That's cool.
So yeah, quick shout out to them because I did a lot of, it was good to actually hear, because I've seen a lot of the movies, but I haven't actually sort of like heard any like podcasts really on like I haven't sort of I don't really seek out that type of podcasts just because a lot of the podcasts I listen to about like more recent events. It's cool to hear one that does like retro stuff as well.
Right.
Yeah.
On Too Much Movie, we cover kind of like it's me and this actor Rob Belushi and Blake. Blake did the One Heat Minute podcast. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I'm not. No.
So it was like based off the movie Heat, but he did a 1 hour. He did a 1 hour podcast or a 1 episode podcast for every minute of the movie Heat. And it built all the way up to the end where he got to interview Michael Mann.
Holy shit! What a closing bit.
Yeah, right. He's a legend, and we started this podcast called Too Much Movie. That is kind of like 90s flicks that are kind of dude action films. Like we just did. God, what is the Devil's Advocate? We did Backdraft. We did L.A. Confidential. And we also did JFK, and that was fun because we got to talk about that movie and my dad's kind of role in that, which was really fun. And then he brought on some amazing, like Oliver Stone, film aficionado, and I just got like a whole other download of education on how that filmmaker worked and all that stuff. It was cool, but that was neat to get to talk about his movies because I never really do that on podcasts as much.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely got like a section of this one devoted to it, so fear no more.
Woohoo!
Now, I mentioned before, this is episode 94.
Right.
so like I said, off mic, I've sort of been doing this for a few years, and I'm sort of approaching that 100 number.
Wow.
But
Congrats.
it was sort of like a random. Oh, so when I first started this podcast, I don't know if you've done any goals for yours or anything like that. I mean, some people liked it to flow organically, whereas I'm like a fair bit more like goal orientated. I like to work towards things. So I wrote out a list of like potential guests over the years. And I was just like, hey, once I get into the high 90s, I might sort of have enough experience behind me to maybe sort of reach out to some more international guests. And I thought, what would be a cool guest for 94? And then I realized that 94 is the year that John Candy passed away. And I was like, it'd be cool to have 94 as one of...
oh yeah,
like a devotion to him. So it's cool to finally like see through on that goal.
That's awesome. Yeah. God, that's interesting how that ends up lining up. But I'm glad to be here for it. That's so cool. Congratulations on 94 episodes, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate. And I know it's kind of funny to put you like on the spot and be like, hey, guess what? You're like a I planned this so far in advance. It's kind of like
no, not at all.
It's kind of funny, but I wanted to also show you. So like a few years ago, before we do this bit, I just want to get one question from you. What's your favorite one of your father's films? What out of all the John Candy movies, which one's your favorite? Do you have one?
I would have to say, I think if I had to watch one all the time, I would watch. I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the best one, I think, for me. But I do like some of the deep cut ones. I love the Schmeggy Brothers one, Last Polka, which is a very early one. I love Who's Harry Crumb. Who's Harry Crumb is kind of like so fun.
You look at that as an actor and probably think like how much fun that would have been to film.
I know. He was that one was really cool because it also had that like Peter Sellers, Inspector Clouseau kind of like element to it, and he's just such a dummy in that movie, so it's so fun to watch.
It's like that. It's a bit like if you go like back. A lot of people know a lot of the movies, but the SCTV stuff is really cool as well for all that sort of skit stuff.
Totally, yeah.
That was really cool. Like I think that was probably one of my first time seeing a bit more dimension to John's like acting different characters, like because I'm kind of used to seeing like the cool uncle or like the like the silly spy or whatever, and then I've seen like a bit more like I guess you could say like degenerative characters with like the cook. What is it like? I've got the thing here, the LaRue.
Johnny LaRue,
LaRue with the chef, like the TV chef.
Yeah, he well, let's see, was that when he was God, he played Julia Child. That's what it was. It was Julia Child.
Yeah, based on a character.
Yeah, that SCTV was for what I always thought, and when I like would rewatch it, was like the goofiest stuff. And I went through this time where I didn't really watch a lot of it growing up, and I didn't really get it. I mean, and I didn't really get how goofy they were, And then now when I rewatch, like some of these actors are like, award-winning actors.
Yeah.
And they're really, really talented, and they were just doing such goofy, playful, funny stuff back in the day, and it's so fun to watch. Like from my dad to Eugene Levy to Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short. All these guys are just really, really serious, cool actors, but they were so goofy. I mean, they still really are, but yeah, those SCTV days really showcase that in a really cool way.
I think that it's one of those things where it's like you kind of need to have a bit like with comedy, right? Like I'll have some jokes where I'm like more serious. It's more of a story piece, and then some that are just straight up silly.
It's funny. I was just at the WGA writers' strike.
Yep.
And I was walking around for the writers because that's going on here in LA, and I live I live right down the street from one of the studios, and I saw Brian Posehn and Bob Odenkirk there, and I thought that was so cool. And I remember when they did not with Bob and David, they had a couple like funny like I thought that was cool because it was like contemporary Mr. Show when they did that.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like the writer's strike brings more opportunities in the scene because you're bumping shoulders with the right people sometimes.
Well, the funny thing is I don't think I ever met I maybe met Brian Posehn once, but he doesn't remember me, but I remember I saw him for the very first time at a Pennywise show in LA. It was for the musician Keith Morris. He had like a benefit show.
Okay.
At the Whiskey, I remember seeing Brian Posehn. Part of me today wanted to bring it up, but I'm like, we're just marching here. I don't know. He doesn't seem to be talking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, do you remember me?
Yeah, you remember me? God.
But I played at the
Whiskey.
Whiskey. Is that right? You said?
Well, he was at the show. I just remember he's a very like visually recognizable person, and so I was at the show. I was in like 7th grade, and it was Keith. It was Keith Morris, who's the singer of Black Flag and Circle Jerks.
Mm-hmm.
He was diagnosed with cancer back then, and so they did benefit shows for him. Yeah, and the one I saw, it was Fishbone, the Vandals, Pennywise, and this band Nashville Pussy opened for him.
Okay.
And
Nashville Pussy's played in Canberra. I've seen.
Oh,
them.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. Only a few months ago at a venue I work at called The Basement.
Oh, whoa. Yeah. I had no idea they were still playing. I remember I was in the pit and I was like a little kid, and there was this big big Asian dude put a mouth guard in. And he was just ready to like fuck shit up. I was like, oh my God, here we go. He was huge, bigger than me. I was like, whoa.
Oh wow, man! I used to work at like an electronics resale business called Dick Smith. They've gone belly up now, but they're basically Australia's equivalent of like Best Buy. Okay. And I had one of the biggest Asian dudes I've ever seen in my life came in and like yell at me because he needed a cable for his Nintendo Switch to like connect, his Nintendo Wii to connect to the TV. And dude, I feel like in my mind when you told that story, it was that dude. So in that play out in my mind, he walks into the pit with a mouth guard and a Nintendo Wii, just ready to fuck shit up. But you're talking about the Whiskey. One of the comedians I listen to who's in LA, he grew up in the Bay Area. His name's Dean Delray. He does a podcast. Yeah, he often talks about the Whiskey and the Rainbow and like all sorts of cool LA spots.
I've met Dean a couple times. He's really good friends with a bunch of my friends who are stand-ups. That guy has got so many stories, man. Because he was like a roadie, wasn't he, for Metallica or something? Was that what it was?
I actually don't know which bands, but I knew he used to book for a few of the venues. Okay. Yeah, so he was like the booker. I think he did the Cow Palace and stuff like that. Okay. But I can't really remember. He had in one of his previous episodes, he had like the his offsider when he was a booker, and they were just talking about wild stories of venue sort of stuff that happens. But
it's funny. Yeah, I went to he had a show at this place called the El Rey, and it was his 50th birthday, and he was the lead singer of the band that performed. And I think
like
Bill
an AC/DC thing with Bill Burr as the drummer.
Bill Burr was on drums.
Holy shit! Yeah.
It was sick. I just remember. I have a buddy, this guy Kevin Christie, who's really good friends with Dean, and Kevin invited me to that, and I just thought that was like it was super fun that night. I remember.
Oh, that's awesome, man! Yeah, no, he talks a lot of Kevin on the show, so that's cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Kevin is an old friend of mine for forever. But yeah.
Awesome. Look, there you go. When worlds collide. Hey, yeah. So I've been listening to Dean's podcast for years, and I sort of got onto him by listening to Bill Burr's podcast. So
okay, yeah, they work a lot together, I think.
I have I've got a like a canvas print that I made of Dean Del Rey like as a bit of an inspiration. It's a quote of his. It's like, I'd rather work 16 hours a day for myself than 8 hours for someone else.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, totally.
Which is his whole mentality. It seems like I've heard a lot of his like schedules and stuff that he talks about on the podcast, and you're just like, wow, man, that dude will like, just come back from a tour and then just instantly have a podcast lined up and then do a spot and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the real deal.
Yeah, he's a lifer, dude, as they say. But yeah, that's cool that you sort of brush shoulders with a few of the people that I listen to online, and I like that Dean also does a bit of music on the side. Like, he did that for like 25 years or something, but it's cool that he's sort of not completely lost that. But I'm glad that he's moved on to comedy.
I respect people like that, because I grew up playing music and I was in punk bands and I still play punk rock music, and I was a roadie for a little while. So when I learned about Dean through Kevin, we had a kind of similar experience in regards to, I just doing both comedy and music, different worlds.
Yeah.
But and then even to tie in Brian Posehn, like I always loved that song "Metal by Numbers" that he sang, and he always kind of like, I think he was wearing a Wasp T-shirt today actually when I saw him.
Yep.
So, he's just like, I've always like. There's one other, Kyle Kinane. Kyle Kinane's a funny stand-up, and he's really deep into the punk rock scene. And the more close, Kyle Kinane's more in the scene that I'm kind of a part of. Chris Gethard, all those guys kind of know a lot of those heads. But yeah, it's like. It's cool because I loved listening to that music growing up, and it's like I realize like I'm just getting older, and it makes sense. There's a lot of other people into the same stuff I'm into as well.
Yeah. I think that it's good to be able to connect over music. Like, I've met so many people in the scene just via like having a similar interest in bands and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I mentioned before I work at a live music venue on the site, and yeah, we've had some cool bands come through there, which also gives me a bit more variety. Like, there's a lot of bands like you mentioned, Nashville, Pussy, and stuff like that. I just wouldn't have ever seen that like level of international band just in my home. Not home. I've lived in Canberra now for 10 years, but like my local bar,
There's my buddy is this guy Jeff Rosenstock, and he's played over in Australia a handful of times. He had a band called Bomb the Music Industry for a while.
Okay.
I know they've played Canberra, but he would work with a couple bands over that way. But they're kind of more in the ska punk scene.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's one renowned Australian ska band called Los Capitan, and they like they got a couple of like songs from when I was in high school. When I was I grew up in that like emo sort of punk scene.
Yeah. Totally.
And yeah, ska was a bit of a crossover between the pop music and the like emo music. You kind of just like you had an appreciation for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up listening to all that stuff. I worked on the Vans Warped Tour, and that was like a big traveling tour that goes on in the U.S. I think they did it in Australia too.
Yep.
That was my first job out of high school. I worked on that tour for like 3 months, and I got to see so many great bands, and become friends with some of them, and keep in touch with others. And yeah, it was cool. I grew up like for music. I loved like ska and punk early on, but then like I got into like a really big like metalcore kind of like hardcore scene kind of vibe. I really like, I saw this band Glassjaw on the Vans Warped Tour, and I ended up becoming buddies with them a bit at the time, and I just became like a super fan. Like, I was just obsessed. They were so sick.
Yeah, nice.
So heavy, and I just love that stuff. And the band I ended up starting out of college, we were very influenced by Glassjaw. It was really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, we got a couple of the heavier ones coming out. Like we in a few months we got a band called Archspire coming through Canberra, and like I don't know if he still holds it, but I interviewed them in 20 19, I think, and at the time their drummer was Guinness World Record fastest drummer in the world.
Whoa, sick.
Yeah, and the singer would sing like sort of like these like it kind of sounded a bit like rap, but like it was metal, like it was the speed of like a Tech 9 rap song.
Okay. Wow, that sounds sick.
But just with metal. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It was one of the first bands they fed AI to like create music. And it
I heard about this.
And it just got stuck in a loop. You can watch it live still. It's playing right now. It's just stuck in like a riff loop and it just can't get out of it. It just gets to the point where it just doubles over itself and becomes just like straight noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. I welcome the machines if they're going to be playing Archspire.
This dude Dan Fonder, I know. Shout out Dan Fonder. He is a runner, friend of mine, and he made this video of the band Real Big Fish, and every time a horn plays, the song gets 1% faster.
Yeah.
By the end of the song Sell Out by Real Big Fish, it is so fucking, it's like it's so funny. It's really good.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's cool to play with things like that. It's good to have been the digital age where you can sort of experiment with different things and filters as well. Yeah. I'm glad that we got like a good crossover with music as well. Hey, this might even be a podcast that I can release on the Metalheads platform, at least this section of it anyway.
Yeah. I know tons of, I grew up playing and listening to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, it's good. I think the arts in general, whether it's like acting, producing, writing, or playing, it's all sort of interlocked.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to just that creative mindset, I guess.
Absolutely, it's the key.
Yeah, and like I said at the top of the show, like when we're chatting off mic, I sort of like tend to find myself different times of the day I'm more active.
Right. Yeah, you were saying in the morning you like to write a lot in the morning.
I wrote a really, like, even before comedy, when I was about like, I don't know, I was still in high school. It was probably about 15 or 16. We were studying the Black Plague in history.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, it was full on. This is some Australian public school shit, man. They just throw you under the bus. But we had to write we were just studying it, and I just woke up and like started thinking about how wild it would be to be like my age then.
Right.
So it's like 4 a.m. I can't get this idea in my head, and I just wrote like a full like 4 or 5 page little mini story about growing up and like being in that era then. So even before comedy, it just kind of like me doing stand up, I used to just kind of find that was a more active part of the day for me.
I'm so lazy when it comes to writing. It's insane. It is I've written a few things, but it is like I have to trick myself into it and like promise myself like a reward afterwards. I love like the active stuff. Like I love performing, acting, improv, but if you like, I could kind of do it. Like I've written like stuff, but it is like getting like concrete out of a toothpaste dispenser. I'm like, oh fuck, but I eventually get it out. But yeah, it's it's like, because then I come to meet people like yourself who's writing jokes all the time, or I meet other writers, and they're just like, they love to like get into that groove and just bang it out. And so for me, if I had any time, it would probably be like around like early afternoon for like 2 to 3 hours. I can go, but then I like start getting tired and I'm out.
Yeah.
I have to like check so many boxes before I get to writing. I'm like, all right, I've got to like wake up, have coffee, go on a run or work out, have a little breakfast, check my emails, sit on my ass, like surf YouTube, like all these stupid things to like get me to like be like, all right, I guess I'll like finish my pilot idea like that I'm working on about, it takes me forever to get to that place. And then when I do, I'm like, I literally look just like a caveman. I'm like blah 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 blah, blah like and jamming ideas out, and it's just like, ugh. So yeah, I guess that's every writer's experience. I don't know.
It's one of those things until you talk about it, you don't realize how common it is.
Yeah, right. I just feel like a full on caveman, just like stomping blah 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 on the keyboard.
I write quite a bit, but I don't practice and rehearse enough. Like whenever I don't sort of prepare enough for my stage time. Like when I finally get on stage, I sometimes find myself riffing or just like doing crowd work or just like pissing about. And sometimes good stuff will come of that, but I, for the most part, don't practice what I write as much as I should.
Yeah, I've like fallen victim to being stupid in that way for myself, where like I'm like, oh, I'll just go. I remember I hosted a comedy show once, stand-up show.
Yeah.
I was such a bad host. I was like, what am I doing? Like improv I can go up and do. Like you can
Yeah.
I kind of get it and I have fun doing that. But like I remember like I was hosting a show and I got up there and I thought I'd improv through the hosting duties, but really good hosts of a comedy show have jokes planned out and like they're, maybe they'll do one or two jokes and then they'll introduce the comic. I just got up there and like, hey, everybody, give yourselves a round of applause. And I just kept on like leaning into cheesy crowd work. And then I realized I sucked. I was like, oh, I have nothing to offer here because you're an idiot for thinking you could just go do this. And I give nothing but respect to stand-ups because like they like have that love-hate relationship with it. And mine is like I don't want to disrespect it by ever attempting it again is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah, I get it. Like I was listening to a podcast recently and they said someone said that they did stand up like once because it was like a dare.
Right.
And the comedians on the podcast was like, how good is it that like the thing we aspire to do is someone's like dare to do once, like to see if they can get through it?
Yeah, it's like I get that though. It's like see the thing is it doesn't scare me to go up there and do it. Like I could go up there and talk to people, but would it be interesting? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Like I guess if I had a couple stories to tell, maybe that's a way to do it. But like I watch like Anthony Jeselnik or Dean Del Rey or these Tom Segura. These guys are like painters, Sarah Silverman, like they architect and write these like beautifully intricate jokes that are so funny to listen to. So it's like all respect to that craft because I haven't really attempted to crack it and whenever I've just tried to wing it, I look like a fool.
I love it. I like hearing I like hearing that like from the other side. Like I obviously only know like Australian comedy. I've never traveled overseas to do any comedy. So it's cool to hear that like it's still as much of a pain in the ass anywhere in the world to crack into.
all hands up to, I mean, not all hands, all praise
all
to
hands,
people.
all three hands up. My
first student film I was ever in, my friend Carlos directed, and it was called All Hands Up. That was the name of it. And his I was in high school and I played like a mob boss, and the mob boss wore socks on his hands. And I was like a gangster type, and his aunt worked at a studio, and she got all the other actors cop uniforms to wear, and it was the craziest movie of all time. It was so goofy. But I remember I was a villain with socks on my hands. I was like, yeah, I wear socks on my hands. You got to keep them. It was super funny.
Well, much like how you hosted the show, I've sort of dabbled in a little bit of acting. I did a student film.
Oh, nice.
I played a part of a failed Tinder date. So the best thing was I had to be so it was like camera facing me. I'm like looking down the barrel, pretending that I'm looking down into the eyes of the person on the opposite side of the table. So it was shot in two different, little bit behind the scenes of the CIT film. CIT's our sort of student sort of study. It's like our community college.
Right.
So
Yeah. City, it's our city college here in the States. Yeah.
okay, yeah. I just dwindled on that for so long. Like, part of me in my mind was just like, "Shut up, he knows what you're talking about."
And then, but I was doing the same thing. I'm in my head going like, "Don't complete his sentence, Chris. You have no idea what he's gonna say. Don't be a know-it-all, you idiot." So we both got in our own heads, dude.
So yeah, we're both trying not to finish the sentence, but we both wanted it to end. No, so I did the CRT film, and the worst thing was, like, I'm great at riffing with people. Like, if I can see someone's face and like see their reaction to what I'm saying, that helps a lot. Whereas I had to just look down the barrel of this camera and pretend that I was on a date with someone. So my one scene, and I'll give you a quick idea about the film. Basically, it's set in the future. We've run out of things to eat, so people are electing that when they die, that they can become food for humanity.
Oh, whoa!
And just like how there's vegans, vegetarians, now there's also people that are like, no, I'm choosing not to eat people meat. And I had to be like, I played as one of the people that wasn't going to like, they're called humanitarians. And I'm like trying to like push my agenda onto this person that's in the
funny.
date.
Yeah.
So I looked down the barrel of the camera and I'm like, the worst thing about eating people is, what are you going to do with the skeletons? And then like cut, that's the end scene, right? and it comes down to like an improv thing that I seen Dean Delray do, where he was like, the worst thing about cannibalism in like in the movies is they're like, someone has to eat the dick, but they never show that. So like the dude that's gone to get firewood comes back and there's just a skeleton with just the dick, and he's like, oh, what the fuck, you guys ate the dude already? Like, I have to fucking eat the worst part? Like, why didn't you wait for me? So yeah, it's kind of, I was playing that improv in my mind as I was doing the scene.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Right, but yeah, that was my one little film, and the other one I was an extra in like a historical recreation documentary.
Wow.
So it's based on the people that discovered Antarctica.
That sounds dope.
And I had to just sit in a room that was a sauna that had been like fitted out to look like a log cabin. So like the wooden walls and stuff. I'll pull up a picture here. But yeah, I basically had to sit in this room and look like I'd been in there like on a cold night to lock in to stay safe. Here's a still from the show.
Oh, dude, you look sweet. Damn, you got a big beard, dude.
Yeah. It's,
and you got an Uncle Buck bowler shirt on.
Let's get into that. So I
is that an original one? Where'd you find that?
Okay, this is a very important part of this show. So, I am a massive Uncle Buck fan. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it's a great movie.
So my fiance went and we were one of the first things we did, first movies that I was like, you have to watch with me. It was kind of like a showstopper, you know. You need to like at least sit with me and watch me enjoy this movie, whether you like the movie or not. Doesn't really worry me, but I just want you to watch it and see what you think.
Yeah.
Luckily, I think she'd already seen it years prior, but like it was sort of cool to rehash it. It's that and Terminator 2 are my two movies that people should watch with me if they haven't seen it before.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we watched the movie, and then it was my 30th birthday at the start of the year, and she wanted to get something special, so she sent away to a custom bowling prints website to have, because they weren't many available in like already made that like match the same sort of color theme and stuff.
Yeah.
So she sent away to a custom place that makes shirts for teams and stuff, and just said, I would like this shirt, these colors. and have it embroidered and all that sort of stuff. So I'll show the shirt. It's basically matches the
It's like
colour theme.
identical.
And after liking their Facebook page and following them and sending through the order, she sees a post. After 50 years of devoted service to the community, we've decided to close our doors. So this was actually one of the last orders they produced.
Whoa, that's amazing.
So yeah, that's I got this shirt, but so that's how I came about to have like a pretty close replica of the shirt from Uncle Buck.
Dude, that's so awesome. Right on.
But I hang on, I'll just pull up another picture. So here it is. Here's the first tattoo I got from Dead Cherub on the back of my leg.
Whoa. Oh my God. I feel like I've seen this tattoo. I mean, it's funny. Every once in a while, I will get a text message from someone, and it'll be a photo of my father on their leg. That's so cool, man. That's awesome. The artist did an amazing job. He looks so demonic. He's like, he got the crazed element of Buck perfect in that image. Oh my God.
You can nearly hear the laugh when you see the photo, and that was 2018, and it's aged really well too. So that was when it was fresh, and it still looks as good. Maybe even a little more blended because time blends the tattoo well.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. I don't have any tattoos, but that's so cool, man. Well, thanks for getting my father his picture tattooed on you.
Yeah, I'm glad you took it well, because I was just like, this could be a disaster ending to that story. But yeah, no. So, and he did a really good job as well. That's who I see now for any like great sort of leg tattoos and that sort of stuff. So yeah. Have you seen the Uncle Buck trailer someone's recreated to pitch it as a horror movie?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
No, so someone's remade a trailer for Uncle Buck, but they've actually like pitched it as a horror movie, and they've sort of had like the spooky music, the bit where he's playing on the piano, like the dun, 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 and it kind of like fades out and goes to like negative, and then it's sort of him like with a hatchet at the back of the car, like doing the laugh. It's a pretty cool cut.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah. I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, that was like something that I always remember from watching different acting types. I appreciate the depth of each character, and I think with Uncle Buck, the depth of the character, you can sort of see past the exterior a little bit towards the end of the film.
Right. Yeah, he that's like the John Hughes, John Candy combo, and I think John wrote Buck for my father, and I think it's plays really into his strengths, and God, that was such a big hit. But he had elements of himself that was that playful. Buck is like a big kid, and my dad was like a big kid, and so I think they work those characters. That character is very much kind of had elements of my father for sure. Though I don't think he would have ever taken us to like a racetrack.
Well, Luke, that's the thing, right? He didn't. Like that was the turning point of the character, and the scenes I've seen. A lot of people have shared this video of him running lines with Macaulay Culkin behind the scenes. Like, that was a really cool little snip that I seen. I reckon. Yeah.
Did you ever see the footage of where Buck is playing with all the delivery people? Have you seen that footage? It's like lost footage. You could find it. It's one of the actors who played a delivery person, and it's like my dad, the late actor Mike Haggerty. Then there's my dad's driver, this guy Frankie Hernandez. God, passed away, but a couple other character actors, and they're all playing. I think they're playing Trivial Pursuit, or they're playing Monopoly, or they're playing like a board game. They're hanging out, and it's like it was a scene that got cut, but you could find it for sure. It's this like extended Uncle Buck scene, and it's really, really funny. You'll get a kick out of that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff. Nearly sometimes more than the movie. Like I like the story behind it.
Right.
That's why I like the random director's cuts or whatever. You know.
Mark Beltzman, that was the other actor I was thinking of. He's in that scene as well.
Yeah. And in your like early childhood, did you ever get any chance to be on any sets or anything like that with your father, or?
Oh yeah. I was on the Uncle Buck set. I remember as a kid, the bowling scene.
Awesome.
We're in the bowling alley. I was there. I think that might have been one of the last days of shooting. And I was on a good majority of them. Cool Runnings, I was on. Who's Harry Crumb, JFK. He wanted us to travel around with him a good amount. So.
Oh, good. Yeah. I've seen a couple interviews over the years. I've seen one with your sister Jen, who mentioned that Uncle Buck was probably the closest to John's like personality out of all of his characters off scene.
Yeah, I think that, like exactly. Whenever he kind of is this like goofy guy, but yeah, no, I think she's right. Yeah, Buck is definitely similar to my father. Very strong similarities.
Yeah. And the scenes, like, do you remember when you were on set versus when you watched the movie? Does that help sort of jog those memories back up again?
I think just for if I was there on location for those scenes, then it does. Only the Lonely was another one he did that I was there for, and I just remember being there for certain days. But Uncle Buck, I believe it was in Chicago, and it was at a bowling alley in Chicago. And I remember it was a second story bowling alley. I think there was businesses downstairs, and I remember the production. And, when you're a kid, you walk up to these kind of big, crews, and it's this big overwhelming thing. But yeah, it's cool. You kind of cut through everybody, and there's your dad kind of hanging out, doing his job. It's a neat experience.
That's cool. It's like, hey, this is my job. Like a lot of people see someone going to work in the morning and coming home, and you don't kind of, as a kid, see the other side of it, but you're kind of on set. That's a cool way to bring you into it.
Yeah, a lot of times hanging out in his trailer, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Now you were similar, a few years age difference between you and Macaulay Culkin. I was wondering if you guys ever, like, on that set ran into each other.
Yeah, it was on Only the Lonely. He was there one day because I'm not sure if his brother was in one. I know his brother was in Home Alone. I can't, but it was on Only the Lonely. I was there, and he had already done Home Alone, and I was like starstruck to meet him. I was so as a kid, I just remember being like super, like, I was starstruck because I'd seen Home Alone, and I was just like everyone else, like, freaked out when I saw that movie. So I remember there was this one time I got to meet him, and I was really intimidated because he was so cool, And I think his brother was there, and yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that. That was a cool memory. And his brother now, God, it's gone off to do amazing stuff.
Yeah. It's cool. Like, a lot of people sometimes focus on the sibling, but it's good to see other people doing stuff like Charlie Murphy, as well as Eddie. Like, a lot of comedians speak highly of Charlie from over the years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they're all unbelievably talented. It's just some of them have gotten a lot more exposure,
And it's like a Bill Burr story that he was on tour with Charlie Murphy and Patrice O'Neill.
Oh yeah. And
he said that Charlie was just like, they were just both riffing on Bill, like giving him a hard time the whole time, and he's like, oh, I know what I'll do, because, like, how after you have a big feed you'd like want to fall asleep.
Sure.
So they'd been up touring, like all that sort of stuff. So he goes into like Popeyes and just gets the biggest bucket of chicken he can, brings it back to the car, and they all hooked in. And Bill just kind of had like a small amount, but they both fell asleep straight after. And he goes, "That was the smartest thing I ever did. They just left me alone for the rest of the time."
That's funny, man. Yeah, good. Yeah, rodeo clowns with food.
Yeah, you're just like, it's called, who was it? I think he said Charlie pulled him aside and he said, "Billy, you got me with the itis." And he's like, "The itis?" And they're like, "Yeah, the itis. That's what happens when you eat too much and you fall asleep."
That's good.
That's
good,
a
man.
good stuff. Like so he's talking about on set and like riffing with your colleagues and stuff. I think some of the best times I've had isn't just on stage, but hanging out with comedians in the green room. Do you ever have any like cool experiences on set or like behind the scenes, funny stories that you remember?
Yeah, I mean for all of them, I think I've had like the fortunate experience of like being in some rooms with some really cool, amazing people, and getting to hang out with some really big comedians, from my dad's world, from when my dad was alive to since he's passed, and then I've also had my own experiences of when I've been doing improv or working on a film, and I get to hang out with like another really cool crew of actors, and there's just a consistency, I think, in no matter what it is, be it like, you know, um, the bar at the Great Western Forum, hanging out with like my dad and Wayne Gretzky when I'm like a little kid, and seeing these guys just all hang out, or if it's like, me hanging out at like a sports bar up the street from an improv club, and it's 12:30 at night, and we're all going to go get Thai food afterwards. Like,
Yeah.
there's this common energy of like camaraderie, and people wanting to have a good time and hang out and tell stories, and it's
Yep.
infectious. You want to keep doing it for forever. I still want to keep doing it, but you just pick and choose, because otherwise you won't get any work done.
Yeah. But
But they're really, really powerful moments.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's like the advice I heard. I keep harping on the same people, but yeah, this was some Bill Burr advice to Dean Del Rey, and he spoke about it on the podcast. And he was saying like, you need to live life to write bits. You're not going to come up with new material while you're in the comedy condo waiting to go on stage, if that's all you ever do.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's so easy to. I'd agree. Yeah, I think that you have to constantly be like widening your horizons and broadening them and doing new stuff, because like that can happen to me. I can get stuck in a rut sometimes and just want to do the same routine all the time. But if I don't go out and push myself to do new things, then I never would get inspired to do anything new. And that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I am conscious of your time, and I want to try and wrap it up soon, but because I could definitely talk to you forever about all this crazy cool stuff. I appreciate you joining the show, and being part of the goal that I set 5 years ago when I set out to do the podcast.
I'm happy to do it, man. Thanks for having me.
This is episode 94 with Chris Candy, and just closing out, I'll give a couple of quick shout outs just because I've just remembered the CIT film I did is on YouTube. It's called Cannibal Holocaust or something like that.
Cool. I'm going to watch that.
It's the first ever thing I ever did with any form of acting. Let me just make sure I got that right. Cannibal Catalysm. Sorry. Cannibal Holocaust was the one of the like early scary like 90s films that I have in my collection. But yeah, anyway.
Right on.
And the other one, the historical documentary, was Men of Ice. And they actually filmed it in a few of the snowy locations around Canberra for the like outdoorsy scenes as well. So
whoa, cool.
Yeah, it's full on. Like they did a lot of work on it, and the makeup artists making everyone look like they had frostbite and all sorts of crazy cool effects. Before we sign off, just do you want to give a shout out to your radio stuff? We spoke about it earlier, and your podcast as well.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff at christophercandy.com. Noise Pollution goes on every Wednesday from 10 to 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I don't know what time that would be in Australia. Maybe it's like I think actually we had a listener once from Australia and they said it was like a morning show for them.
Okay, yeah.
I if it's but yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, you can find all my stuff there. I love making stuff. I do a lot of it, so hopefully there's something I'm doing that you like.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I've checked out the website. You got some cool skits on there as well. So the that a couple of those had me chuckling, like the love language and that sort of stuff. That's
thanks,
really
man.
fun. So yeah, thanks for being on the show. And before we wrap up, I am going to announce a charity bowling event. So I've got like an Uncle Buck themed bowling event, just like the alley that we spoke about. It'll be in, but instead it'll be in like the Canberra's version.
I love it.
Of a Chicago bowling alley. We're going to be getting a bunch of comedians versing each other at a bowling game, and we'll turn that into a charity event. Now we spoke about bowling and the fun of all that, raising some money. Where do you think would be the best place in John Candy's name to donate that money?
I think first of all, that's awesome, and I think it'll be a really fun game. And God, I would love to try and be out there to play a couple games of bowling with you guys. Who knows? But I think if you were to do a charity, my dad loved Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Yep.
He spent a lot of time doing stuff with that charity. So that would be a great charity foundation to put some money towards.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if all else fails, there's always online Wii bowling that we can always fall back on. And as long as I have the correct HDMI cable to connect it to the TV.
That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, but thanks heaps. We'll wrap it up on that, and cheers everyone for tuning in. Been a really cool episode.
Thanks, Barky.
Don't buy me a drink. Just name names. Yeah, right. Big Tony, you'll get fucking thrown out.
A strip club with your floppy disk.
All day. Make people feel shame for shit all day.
Don't blow
Turn
it.
it into a hard drive.
Yeah, right. You'll get fucking... We're here to...
Keep it simple. Count your money.
that they're not proud of.
Just give me $10.
Hey, right.
Click.
Did you hang up?
No, I just said click.